Hi everyone, welcome back to the Gav and Marv podcast. I'm not Gav, but this guy is.
Gav. I am Gav.
There you go.
You ever seen Guardians of the Galaxy?
No, it's too science fiction to me. It sounds crazy.
I am Groot.
Actually, yeah, I've seen. That's the talking tree, ain't it?
Yeah.
Mate, I watched that sat next to you.
Did it?
Yeah, we were sat on a plane going somewhere. You know, when you've exhausted Anchorman and The Wolf of Wall Street, and I was like, what else could we watch? When we was doing 2 to 3 long haul flights a month, and we sat in lounges all over the world for too long. British Airways did not want to rotate films, so I ended up watching that. And I think I watched Marley and Me and cried when the dog died or something at the end of it.
I remember one film we watched. We simultaneously started at the same time and laughed in all the same places. Was it like the
I tell you what that was. Will Ferrell one when he goes into the jungle. Land of the Lost. What a random film that was. I was choking on the freeze-dried pretzels.
That was a good one. I put it on for the kids and Beth the other night, or the other week, and they just didn't get it. They're like, I'm not having it. I was like, this is hysterical.
So they didn't laugh at the giant crab?
No.
Or when he got bit by a fly and his back's the biggest ballista that covered his whole back. They didn't laugh at that.
Mate, I was in stitches. I was like, watch this. They're not laughing. I'm just in stitches on my own in the house on the sofa.
I bought you a mug after that. You know, at Christmas, that following Christmas, there's a bit where he's selling mugs in the shop and they're women's breasts. And I bought you a mug. I don't know what Beth thought of me at that point, but
she thought that was quite good, to be fair.
I thought it was good.
She thought I loved it. Morning coffee never tasted better, mate.
Milky coffee. Why did you ask me if I'd seen Guardians of the Galaxy? Because I look like Groot.
No, because I was just saying I am Gav and just remind me of I am Groot.
I thought it was a tedious link to me looking like a tree. That's more like when I swim. I used to call myself a floating log. Just go down the stream. Anyway, welcome back. Thanks for joining us again. And we've had some good feedback, fantastic feedback. In fact, lots of people started watching now, which is great. Obviously, when we film these or record these and when they come out, it's a little bit delayed because of processing and sort of delaying them to make sure we've got regular content, which is fine. So I'm sure that if people have suggested things, then in coming future episodes, it will come out. So, but yeah, it's really good. Good feedback from the back pain and abs as well. They're the top 2 most listened to at the moment, which we knew. Back pain, 1 in 2 people, abdominals, because everyone wants the quick fix. So if you have a spoonful of water every day for 6 years, you will have a 6-pack. Try it. Let me know. Give us your feedback. But apart from that, today we're on to a new topic. And we're going to talk about legs today. Okay. And not everyone can have big strapping legs like me, obviously.
Quadzilla over there.
Or quads no action, as Craig Barton always called me. Christened me that name. But what the reason why we chose legs is because of, I mean, last year it was one of the top 10 trends. I think it was strong is the new sexy in the ACSM global top 10 trends in fitness worldwide. Why is that? It's because you see things like glute drives, booty builders, a lot more women more than ever before are lifting weights, which is fantastic. A whole understanding of building muscle to reduce body fat is there now. No one's as scared of becoming the Incredible Hulk in 1 week. Love it if that could happen. But they don't do that. So it's either stereotypically, it doesn't matter actually stereotypically, it doesn't matter who it is, male or female. People either want to grow the size of their legs or lean their legs. I was going to say lean the size of it or lean down the legs. So that's why I thought today would be a good topic. What do you think?
Sounds good, mate. There's a couple of angles you can go at it. Like different cell functions around the legs from male to female. So typically females have more receptors around the legs that store body fat there. So that's one thing to think of. It's not to say you can spot reduce specifically from those areas, but the more blood flow you can get to those areas, the better that you can start to release fats from those sites. Let's say you can contract the muscles better. The more contractions you get, the better it's going to be. But you're not specifically, the body isn't just going to go, okay, I'm going to take body fat from that area, right? Yeah. But if you, like, this is a little test somebody could do at home. If you wanted to, you could try it now if you want. But if you stand up or let's say, for example, you store body fat at a specific site in your body, touch that area and let me know whether it's cold or warm. and 9 times out of 10 it's cold. 9 times out of 10. So if you're
so I'm just thinking of where I'm holding and where I want it to grow. Sorry, carry on. Don't go there.
Don't. Let's stop that one there. But yeah, typically back of the legs. If you think the majority of people nowadays are sat on their ass.
Yeah.
There's no blood flow going there.
No.
And typically, if you look at the environment that your body will adapt to the environment you're in. And I spoke about this on another podcast I was on the other day, where we were talking about injuries and so on. If you look at the way people sit on chairs now, I'm sat on a chair now talking to you, but if you sat at your desk on a laptop, the back of your hamstrings are on the edge of the chair. Mm-hmm. So your ass is on the chair, but if you look at where the seat ends, mm-hmm. it's typically where the back of the, like 3/4 down maybe, or a quarter down from the glute fold, will be constantly on the hamstrings, and typically where the hamstring crosses with the adductor. So typically people can get like adhesions laid there. There's more fibrous tissue being laid down there because you're constantly putting pressure on it. So people can get quite locked up in the hamstrings if they're sat quite a lot through the day, especially that area. So it's putting exercises around those areas which can help free up and lengthen those areas and sort of free up the tissue from that. So that can be one factor when you're training legs. Well, now that can have a crossover where you can contract the muscle better. You can get more blood flow to those areas. So that's number one. Number two, you're going to take less pressure off the low back. If you're getting more blood flow to that area, you're able to contract those muscles a bit better. You're not tight in those areas anymore. Do you know what I mean? So imagine like you're going to do a bent over row, for example, or an RDL. But if those tissues are restricted, then you're going to go to another area to get that motion from, and typically it's going to be a little back. So when leg training, those are a couple of things that I think of straight away. And then obviously if you can't contract the muscle well, you're not going to grow it.
Yeah,
it's just that simple. So
yeah, just a couple of things there I picked up, and one thing that links to is must be 7-8 years ago, a good friend of mine, I was fortunate to be his best man at his wedding, and as a little gift he bought me a tour of the Emirates Stadium, obviously best stadium in the world, Gav. And so I went, I took my brother as well, he's massive Arsenal fan, and Carl came with us as well, and we went and did the tour. And I always say to people, I mean, I went out of a fan's perspective. I'm going because I'm a huge fan, but I was absolutely blown away from the knowledge that I actually did the celebrity tour. It was a guy called Perry Groves, used to play for Arsenal in the 80s, early 90s. Very funny guys on the radio on TalkSport quite often. But anyway, I went there wanting a sort of star-studded, approach. But when I got there, the tour was very far from it. It was so fascinating. And I honestly encourage anybody that's interested in sports science, or just general business to go and do it. The way that their tiering system set up, their payment structure, the membership, it's just such a huge business. I mean, everyone says that football is a business, and it is. Now, the thing that I wanted to pick on that links to this, I don't think I've sold you an Emirates tour yet, is that when it was built, Arsene Wenger at the time, who was known as a pioneer when he first came to Arsenal, because a lot of the things that he brought in and spoke about, it wasn't introduced in football then. Diets were not introduced then. Electrolytes weren't. I mean, he was getting them to take supplements after games and recovery. So when he built the Emirates, not only did he look at the environmental impact and recycling of rainwater and the positioning of the pitch so that it had enough light that made the grass grow better, so the opening was, whatever. That was all very thoroughly thought of. But all the seats in the changing rooms were rounded, and they were all cushioned, because when they finished games or when they came in at half time, they'd sit down, restricted the blood flow to hamstrings, and he knew that there'd be a correlation to hamstring rate injuries. When they went to away games, they literally had trunks full of cushions, and everywhere they went, the players were all given their own cushion to sit on. They were not allowed to sit on wooden chairs, metal chairs, or anything with a hard surface. It was unbelievable. When you got into there was a dip tank, a water pool, and a hydro pool after the game, that if you had any knocks on, everyone went in there for, I think it was like 30 minutes. But rather than turn on a button, because you were getting into a wet surface, the first step triggered it to turn on. Yeah. So that no one had to ever reach, because he knew that when people went in there, when you reach for things, there's a slip hazard.
Yeah.
that's the, a lot of people said that he came from Japan before that. And if I've told you the Arsene Wenger autobiography, I get shares. He came from Japan to
Grand Passate, wasn't it?
It was all over there. He's Grand Passate. He was at Monaco. But he brought a lot of these thinkings back from Japan, where they talked about feng shui and, the angle of rooms, like the shape of the room was right. So I'm linking this because I'm an Arsenal fan, and you can tell I know way too much about this. But it was when you said that about sitting on your hamstrings, that's what came to mind. Restricting blood flow. But also on a previous podcast, I went down the route of a greenhouse. And I said, your body shouldn't be related to a car or a vehicle and talking about fuel and petrol. It should be a greenhouse, because greenhouses need an environment for things to thrive. And if the environment's not correct, it doesn't adapt. So, which is a much better analogy than a car for me. So anyway, you could put cheap petrol in a good car and it still goes, but you can't do that in a greenhouse. It's got to be premium. And that's where I think this is it, because you are talking about the quality now. So now we know a bit more about Arsenal Football Club. Let's talk about the training effects, because now we've got this fine balance of, are you strong enough? Can you contract? Are you mobile enough to do it? So from a coaching perspective, where do I start? Do I start on strength? Do I start on improving motion? And you're going to tell me it depends, or it's both. Go for it.
To be honest, I'd make sure people are structurally balanced first.
Okay, talk us through that.
You can't. There's no way you can build muscle and burn body fat if you're injured.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the predictors that, if you're going to succeed in building muscle or getting in shape. If you're on the massage couch, or you're out of the gym more than you're in it, you ain't going to build muscle. It's as simple as that. So you want to be as structurally balanced as possible, or decrease your risk of injury as much as possible. Mm-hmm. Improving the range of motion at specific joints is going to allow you to tap into more muscle fibers, tap into more motor units, so you can recruit more muscle fibers. So if you only partially train a range, then you only hit a certain portion of the muscle. So the more full range motion I get, the more muscle fibers I can hit. So I would probably go down the route of going through some kind of structural balance phase, looking at improved range of motion, looking at technique and quality and things like that. And you also have to remember as well, let's say we refer this to something like a back squat, for example. The stronger you are at the back squat, this could be any squat for that matter. It doesn't have to be a back squat, but I'm just giving the example. The stronger you are at that, the more weight you're going to lift. The more weight you lift, typically the more muscle mass you'll end up having. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. When you think of something like a back squat, the load on that can be improved by technique. Not just will and power, that type of thing. Just improving your technique can exponentially help you put more load on the bar.
Yeah.
So that's a skill requirement. That doesn't mean that you're going to grow muscle. Make sense? So you have to get into that position, full range of motion, be able to contract the muscles you want to contract.
Yeah.
So that's why I would probably go down the route of full range of motion first, getting as many muscle fibers hit and recruited as possible. Mm-hmm. And then start to look at, okay, let's add load to that. Let's make sure, because if we look at volume as well, yes, volume is going to be sets and reps and so on, but then it's also load on top of that. So how much volume on that muscle are we getting on it with rep, sets, and load?
Do you think, going back to that comment about range of motion and injury, linking the two, I've always spoke to quite a lot of people about endurance sports, and I always talk about the difference between the hip angle and the leg lift on a long distance runner versus a sprinter. Long distance, to me, you've seen me, I do what's called the Marvin shuffle. I don't have a typically high leg lift, which I think is energy consuming, and which makes me a great endurance athlete. But anyway, when you sprint, it's a massive high knee. You're pulling up as high as you can. But if people are doing long distance running, there'll be a lot of people listening to this that they're not a member of gyms, or they don't like going and lifting weights. And I fully understand that. And it's absolutely fine. Everyone's got different likes and dislikes. But if I'm going long distance running 3-4 times a week because I like running and it's worked for me in my fat loss journey, that's a partial range. When are they going to ever get to that? So the reason I'm saying it is because the only long-term effects you're going to get from this is injury, because you're building up strength in a shortened range. You're going to get great at long distance running, and every time you're going to have to do anything else, it's not going to improve your agility, your actual, what they call functional movement, is it?
Yeah, exactly. So you're correct in a way there. And you have to look at, it's that tolerability effect as well, because you're just hammering the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
So technically people would think of it as the more I do of it, the better I'm going to get at it. But then you've got that tissue just being hit over and over and over. So at some point, it's like a continuum. Excuse me.
You can choke, it's fine. Choking's good.
Still feeling physically sick talking about Arsenal, sorry mate. It's like a continuum, right? So if for example, I lay this out when I try and talk about it with students, if they're learning strength training and so on, and looking at what reps are good for certain people. Now, typically people would think, I got to do low reps for strength. But if somebody is an endurance athlete, and they've never done weight training, for example, there's no way they're going to be able to tap into their motor units and muscle fibers at that heavy weight to go that low, because they've never done it before. They'll only be able to tap into about 7 to 11% of what they can do straight away.
Yeah.
So you've got to slowly get them there. So for an endurance athlete that typically does high reps, their strength training might not be within the 1 to 5 rep range. It might be 6 to 10 or 8 to 12. You might have to start them there for strength. Now, when you look at the percentage or the rep range that you would still get the minimum strength response is around 70% or 12 reps. Okay. So that would probably be an ideal place that I would start their first strength training phase. 12 reps. Let's get the repetitions going. Let's put workouts in place that's going to help them with the weak links within their running. So if you're working at a specific angle there, well, what angles aren't I hitting? And then I can put those in. And I would probably start there and then slowly periodize in, getting them to lower reps so they can get stronger, because essentially they're already doing high repetition work on the road.
Yeah.
I don't want to replicate what they do on the road in the gym. I want to just make the tissues more strong, more to decrease risk of injury.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm looking at what are the weak links for them. And typically the stronger they get, this is what I've found when I train runners, the stronger they get, the less ground contact time they have, the better stride length they have, the less, like if you think of that less ground contact time as well, the more they can absorb force into the floor and propel back out. They're spending less ground contact time. That's less sort of pliable that tissue has to be, and the less force going through that tissue and into the joints. So imagine like a good set of tires on a car. Yeah. Bang, just building the tires up, so it's much easier for them to come through, right?
Awesome. Sorry to drag that into endurance, but I just think there's a lot of people that are just recreational exercises, and I think that's a go-to exercise for people. And they might not be running to improve running. They just, it's like people run because they think it's the only way of losing weight. So they just go out running and hammer themselves, and then they come back and say, I'm injured.
But then the other flip of the coin is, I don't need to do legs, I run.
Yeah.
When you actually do need to do legs. You do need to make your legs strong, because you can make your runs faster. I've got a guy at the minute in the coaching group, and he's come from an endurance background. That's like, he loves doing it. He's done triathlons before and so on. And he's like, look, so he wants to make sure his hormones are in the right place. He's getting a little bit, like, he's over 40 now, so he wants to make sure his testosterone is going down slower rather than quick, type of thing. And we laid off all endurance-based stuff. It was like he would go out do his daily walks and so on. It might be light work here and there on the bike if he needed to catch up on anything. But that was just more of an activity thing. And all we focused on is progressive strength training. Now, he came to the house the other day, and we were having a chat. And he said he went out for a run with a guy. There's a friend of his. He's been continually doing his endurance work in the background. So this other guy, hammering it hard, so on. They did I think it was a 10K, he said, and he battered him. Like, he absolutely nailed him. The guy that was training the endurance work, doing his runs, 3 to 4 runs every week, really going for it, quite a conditioned guy, couldn't keep up with the guy in my group because, and he'd only just started doing his endurance work the past 2 weeks. Yeah. But he got that strong, he was able to stride more, spend less time on the ground, and he's like, what have you been doing?
It's unbelievable. I get it. I've done it myself. I've done all this. It's my history. I've done marathons. I've done an Ironman. I've done triathlons, and it was all because, a silly bet, But it was all because I wanted to prove that you don't need to go and do that. Yes, I was playing football. Yes, I had to do some endurance work because it's the nature of the beast. But the reason why I could go from not even be able to run 10K to running an Ironman within a year, and the whole method behind that was based on strength training principles. I'm not trying to say you have to be a bodybuilder, because that's what the stigma is. It isn't. It's just about improving your leg strength, decreasing your injury, and improving your output. It was all it was. I mean, lockdown one, I thought I'm going to start going running. I had no equipment at home. I like going running. It was more of you have to get out of the house, right? It was more about mentally and physically. Yep. Get my little Garmin watch on, go for a run, 8-minute miles. I'm thinking, God, I used to do like 6.5-minute miles. I was rapid at one point. Within 6 weeks, I'm down to 7-minute miles. And we've got an app at the job I had at the time. The guy said, how have you got your minute miles down that much? I've gone, oh, well, I've got some weights. I've got, a good friend of ours, Andy Lucas at Fitness Fiesta, lent me some weights. So I was doing squats. I was doing lunges. I was getting my leg strength up. I was doing the basics. I was doing structural balance work. I was working on things like glute bridges, lay on the floor, just lifting up and down, getting the strength, the fundamental strength there. And it just dropped. It didn't drop because I went out more running. That was part of it. Don't get me wrong. I did the runs, but 1-2 runs a week, 2-3 weight sessions a week, you're flying. So it's not about that. So yeah, we've battered that. That's really good. Everyone's out doing a marathon off of 2 weeks training. Let's just go on.
It's good to think about that as a concept though as well, because it's not just about just going in and doing one thing. You need a nice complementary approach that's going to help you long term and sustain that, because there's not, again, like you said, people go out and run until something breaks.
Yeah,
you've got a good well-rounded approach that's going to help everything, and you're more likely not going to get injured the more you can stay on the road. And it goes back to that, like you said, with the Arsenal thing, like they were looking at those little things that's going to help them improve their game over and over, and it made a dramatic difference, especially when Wenger came in, because they were phenomenal when he came in. They won leagues and so on. And you can even think about that and correlate it to someone like Team Sky for the Tour de France, and when Bradley Wiggins won all the Olympic gold and the Tour de France.
Fine margins was the name of it all.
Fine margins they went to improve 1% at every little detail.
Yeah.
And they compounded. So it's just a compounding effect of how you're going to stay injury free, improve your performance week on week. I shared something like this in a post yesterday on my stories. I think it was a James Clear quote that he put on his thing, and I shared his story in my stories. It was just making a 1% improvement every day is dramatic difference when you compound it. I remember Charles saying years ago when he said the difference between first place and last place at the Olympics is 1%. You look at that time difference in a 100-meter final, for example. The time difference is 1%. So if you can make a 1% change or 1% difference day to day, and you compound that over a year, it's huge.
And why wouldn't you? That's the whole thing. And there's so many things that people can do on any aspect of training, legs, arms, doesn't matter. There's so many things that people can do. The problem is they come to us and they want the 60% solution, not the 1%. And I get that, because everyone wants as fast results as possible, but there's only so much you can do in a 1-hour gym session. But guess what? There's a lot of things you can do when you go home. There's a lot of things you can do to improve your sleep quality and everything else that comes with it. And it will all always relate to the same principles of well-being and lifestyle. But people have got to take the 1% more seriously, because they're doing, if every day you wake up and make the same 2 to 3 mistakes, then them improvements won't, you're not in the environment. Your greenhouse isn't properly prepped and maintained to make those changes. And the more, the rule of any agriculture, because I'm sticking on this theme, the more fertile the ground is, the quicker and better things grow. So whether it's growing legs, arms, shoulders, losing weight, whatever you want to call it, it's the same. So
I think you're right there in a way that people want the 60%, and it is to be honest, when you break it down, when people come to me, for example, on a consult call or a strategy call, whatever it is, all I'm looking at when I'm talking to them is what is the easiest thing they can start with now that's going to compound next week, and then what can we change then to compound again. I'm trying to break it down in so small fragments that they can actually start something without being overwhelmed.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, like I've been talking about nutrition templates today, trying to make tracking their food or being able to sustain their food intake much easier without tracking on MyFitnessPal, because people end up not tracking, right? So some people can do it really well, some people can't. Some people just let it go. So when we're looking at food intake, for example, if I can help them stick to that food template a little bit easier by 1% a day or 1% per week, whatever it is, then that's going to compound again.
Exactly.
It's like looking at little roadblocks you can unlock, free it up, and you're good to go.
Cool. There's two parts that I want to make sure we cover before we finish up.
Go.
One is going to be to do with diet and nutrition, and the second is going to be just general exercise tips or selections, types of exercise people can do. Because what we definitely want more of is people to have some takeaways from this, so they're not just listening to it because Gav and Marv give us a daily dose of motivation. Fantastic, it's great that we do that. People have said that, but we also need to give them some homework, get people that's listening do proactive. So which one do you want to tackle first? What goes in your mouth or what you do in the gym?
Let's go gym first.
Cool, gym. So top exercises, it could be just ones that you prefer, things that you like people to start with, general advice.
My biggest bang for buck that I would go for, if you're looking to still improve muscle mass, you can still improve muscle mass with this. You can improve flexibility. You hit massive range of motion at the ankle, knees, and hips, is a split squat. But where you start with that split squat depends on your own ability to complete. So the first one I would start with, if you're a beginner and you're lacking loads of range of motion in the hips, is you raise your front leg up on a step as high as you need to get that knee as far past the toe as possible, and you put the hamstring so it's covering the calf. So basically your ass is touching your heel. So that's the type of range you want to get. The back leg is going to be as straight as possible. So if you think the back leg is being stretched through the quads, the groin, the hip flexors, they're all getting stretched on the back leg. You also have to remember the front leg, when you go that deep into the squat, you're stretching the hamstring and the glutes as deep as they can go. So you're still getting stretched to the hamstrings around the hip portion. So even though it's closing down at the knee, and then you also stretch the groin in the front leg as well, because the groins stretch in different ways. So you're getting multiple stretch positions. You're getting deep into the range, so you can start recruiting more muscle on the quads, the glutes, the hamstrings, and so on. And then you're clearing the ankle as well, so you're seeing how much range of motion you get in the ankle. So in my opinion, you can go through progressions of that. That's the first level I would start. And then as you get better with flexibility, you can start to take the step down, so it's 2 feet on the floor, and then eventually you can turn around. Back leg is elevated, so that's the most stretched one. The highest I will go on the back leg is probably around mid shin height. So people confuse the back leg elevated split squat with a Bulgarian split squat. So the back leg elevated is like your leg is still trying to stay straight as possible. Whereas the Bulgarian split squat, you got your back leg on a bench, for example, and you only pretty much do like the top half of the split squat. Make sense?
Yeah.
So the front foot elevated all the way to the back foot elevated. That front leg that's working should look identical. The ass should be as close to the heel as possible.
Cool.
Okay, so that exercise there alone will get you ready for a squat. It's going to help you with structural balance left to right, recruit hamstrings, quads, groins, everything. Yeah,
not to mention strengthening of knees, ankle ligaments, and everything else comes with it. It's it's done us proud for years, that exercise. I think we've used it on every fitness retreat holiday we've taken, and anyone that we've worked with. I think it's every age, ability, and skill set. So I think that's a definite good one. What's your thoughts on calf raises and the development of growth hormone, natural growth hormone? There's a lot of people doing tedious amounts of calf raises because they think, well, that's the only way we're going to get growth hormone production and trying to burn as much body fat. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't know about the growth
very magazine theory, if I'm totally honest with you. It's no reputable person that's ever said this to me.
So, no.
I was asked to write about it in a very famous magazine. I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. I said,
okay, so they're probably trying to correlate it with an old biosig site, probably, where, remember Charles used to say the growth hormone site was the carbs and so on, which now we know based on research, it wasn't very good research and so on. So to be honest, that's not going to be anything to think of. when you're looking at releasing as much growth hormone from training as possible, something like a GBC setup, so German body composition setup, is going to be real good. But the way you've got to do it is you're basically building up lactate as much as possible. So you're doing high repetitions. Well, like hypertrophy repetitions, basically. So 8 to 15, maybe 20 reps. You're doing minimal rest periods. So it's like, let's say you do 12 to 15 reps of a split squat, like we just mentioned. You do 12 to 15 on each leg. You take anywhere from 30 seconds to 60 seconds rest. And then you do like 12 to 15, 15 to 20 on a seated row, lat pull down, bent over row, whatever. Then you take the same amount of rest and you go back to the split squat again. And you do your sets. And then your next one would be hamstrings and a push exercise, for example. So basically what's happening now, you're building up a lot of metabolic waste products. You've got minimal rest periods. So the byproduct of that from the body, it raises as much growth hormone as possible to start to clear. So that's one way you can do it with training. Another way is you want to make sure you're recovering well. You're going to release as much when you sleep too. So if you're not getting into deep sleep, you're not going to release as much growth hormone. So focusing on sleep, good quality training. In terms of calf raises, you wouldn't tell from the size of my bloody calves compared to yours. I've actually started doing more calf work now, and the puppies are growing, but they're very slow to grow. But I'm doing them twice a week. One day I'll do seated calf raises, another day I'll do standing calf raises. But on both days, I also do tibialis raises as well. So I train the front of the leg. People often forget that is one muscle they need to strengthen to help their knees too. So yes, train the calves, which are phenomenal, but that anterior tib, flexor hallucis longus at the front, fancy name for a big muscle that goes right in the front of your shin all the way down to your big toe. Those are the ones as well that help decelerate the knee. So they're going to control that rotation of the leg and the knee going forward. So I actually do both. Good. So if you're talking structural balance, I would do both of those. And you would typically put those at the end of a leg day or a total body day.
Good job, Asta. What you want to do is the old Arnold Schwarzenegger technique where he cuts his legs, he cuts his trouser legs off until his calves get bigger. So you can always see his weakness.
Yeah, mate, I've got my shorts on right now.
Keep your shorts on all year round.
I got shorts on, mate. All good.
All right, last one to finish off then, because this is the bit that most people like to focus on as well, which is the nutrition element of it. So we're talking about lean legs or fat loss reduction around the legs, that kind of style, because they're the kind of questions we'd asked in layman's terms. What kind of nutrition advice would you give to someone on those guidelines?
So you want to be trying to keep as much muscle mass as possible. And the reason I say that is because you're going to need to be in a calorie deficit, obviously, to drop body fat. So if you're going aggressive, like I wouldn't want to go too aggressive in a fat loss cycle, that you're going so low that you start to take away muscle mass that you want to keep hold of, which is going to keep your metabolic rate as high as it can. And to get that look that you want in your legs, if you want good looking legs afterwards as well, because it's pointless revealing all this body fat if you've got no body shape to show for it. That's why people are losing body fat, right? So I would definitely make sure you're in a calorie deficit, and you want to be making sure your protein levels are where they need to be. So for Gem Pop, like for recreational gym goers that want to get in shape, they want to drop body fat and keep all the good quality muscle, protein, I would probably tap out the highest at like 2.2 grams per kilo. Calorie deficit just starts, like, there's a simple way to do it to begin with. One, track your food religiously, like absolutely anything you put in your mouth, you track the amount of it and you put it in MyFitnessPal. That's going to give you the current calories you're on. Then I would just start with taking away 500 calories of those to begin with and see if you start dropping some body fat, keeping it simple. So that's a good way to start with it. You could also look at what your target body weight ideally is going to be. So let's say, for example, you're 90 kilos and you want to be 80 kilos. So you can work out the calculation off that. So your target body weight in kilos, and then you work out your calorie deficit from there.
Yeah.
Okay. Another one, I guess, one you could do in body weight in pounds. You do body weight in pounds by 12, and that's your calorie deficit to start with. That's typically a good one to run with. It's really, really simple. Whatever your body weight is right now, work that out in pounds. So let's say you're in kilos, you multiply that by 2.2. That's your body weight in pounds. you multiply that by 12, and that's typically a good place to start. If you're not losing body fat after 2 weeks, reduce a few hundred calories from there.
Yeah.
And then just make sure your protein levels are around anywhere from 1.8 to 2.2 grams per kilo. Okay.
Good takeaways, Gav. Takeaway is probably the wrong word for people that want to lose weight, but it's a good starting point. I think, I think the key to that was the starting point, tracking everything. And we know that's the thing that's the difference between people that succeed and don't. The people that succeed, just like anything in life, they've got a plan, they know what they're doing, they're organized, and they stick to it. And the people that are not organized, running around like headless chickens, trying a new diet every week, it just keeps coming back. And if you do find something that works, guess what? A few weeks later, we're back to stage one again, because the weight comes back on 10 times quicker. So good takeaway, food for thought there. You see what I've done there? Lots and lots of food related, we'll leave it at that before we start getting into chocolate bar analogies. Thank you, Gavin. Is there anything you want to say to our listeners before we go?
Just if they do have any questions on anything we've discussed today, if they have any questions on anything they want to hear, whatever they're struggling with, just send it through to us or my Instagram, Gavin Attore. This is probably the best place to get me.
Yeah.
Or Gavin at gavinattore.com. So GAVINATTORRE.com. Send through some questions there, and we'll get them answered on the next one.
Awesome.
And, we'll do that.
Okay, let's wrap it up. That's good. Everyone go out and buy Arsene Wenger's book. Do a stadium tour at the Emirates. Honestly, I just thought, rabbit hole. As soon as I saw it, I thought, I'd better shut up about this, because I've hopped on way too much about Arsenal Football Club. But
if you do go there, there's an even better stadium just further down the road.
Oh, be quiet. No one likes West Ham.
Best stadium in the world.
No one likes West Ham. Cheers, Gav.
Nice, mate. I'll speak to you in a bit.
Bye.